Mo Salah has announced that he is leaving Liverpool at the end of this season. In this one, we're going to have a look at 12 players that Liverpool could look at to try and replace him. Okay, I've got the 12 players loaded in here and I've got 5 different tiers. I've got the 1, I've got great option, I've got okay, I guess, I've got not realistic, and I've got no. We're going to go through these in order. So the first player we've got is Mohammed Kudus. He obviously went from West Ham to Tottenham last summer, and he claimed that he had Tottenham in his heart. He claimed that it was only ever Tottenham he wanted. So it'll be very interesting to see his actions when and if Spurs get relegated. If they don't get relegated, he probably just stays. If they do get relegated, there is a chance that Liverpool could potentially get him quite cheap. And he's not exactly the best stylistic match to Mo Salah, albeit he is a right winger that is left-footed, has the ability to cut in. However, he's much more of a creative player than an out-and-out goal scorer. But I don't think that Liverpool are going to be able to necessarily get a left-footed winger who plays on the right, who is like an inside-forward goal scorer. I think that is quite a rare trait. I think that's quite a rare player that they have in Salah, and that's why he's been so good. But Mohammed Kudus does tick some boxes. Like I say, left-footed winger on the right. Premier League proven, which is quite a big thing. I mean, in this list, I've got 6 players that are playing in the Premier League. I've got 6 players that aren't playing in the Premier League, but one of them obviously has in Olise here. And being Premier League proven is obviously a massive thing. It's a huge, huge risk when a player comes from another league, be it Serie A, be it La Liga, be it Bundesliga, and comes to the Premier League. They can really either hit or miss. We've seen it before, especially from the Bundesliga as well, and a few of these players are from the Bundesliga. It is very interesting to see when these players come in, because it kind of doesn't matter how you've done previously in other leagues. We've seen some of the best players from other leagues come to the Premier League, and it just hasn't worked out. From the French League, we've seen it as well. So being Premier League proven is obviously a massive thing. And we've seen teams like Man City go out and spend extra money on Premier League proven players like Semenyo, like Guehi, for example, Eze to Arsenal as well. Teams are spending the money on Premier League players from these lower clubs. The lower clubs are taking the risk, and then the bigger clubs in the Premier League are just paying a premium to get these players. And like I say, Kudus is Premier League proven, which obviously is a massive, massive thing. However, I don't think that he is the best stylistic match for Liverpool need to replace Mo Salah. But maybe that's not such a bad thing. I haven't put him in a tier yet. But of course, Liverpool always had a Bobby Firmino up front as somebody who wasn't necessarily going to score all of the goals. They left that to a Salah or a Mane. Now they have Ekitike and Isak who are scoring goals. So maybe a creative player could be a better option than an out-and-out goal scorer. Nevertheless, I'm going to put Kudus in okay, I guess. I don't think he'll be like an unbelievable signing if they were to make it. But if Spurs do go down, they might be able to get him quite cheap. Okay, the next player we're looking at is Jarrod Bowen. Jarrod Bowen's an interesting one because he's on a massive contract at West Ham, clearly loves the club. And if he was going to leave, you thought he probably would have left a couple of years ago now. But he stayed at West Ham. However, we'll have to see what happens when West Ham are relegated, or if West Ham are relegated, because that could change things. I personally believe that if West Ham stay in the Premier League, then Jarrod Bowen won't leave West Ham. But if West Ham are relegated, then we could see him look at his options. I think Jarrod Bowen would be a much better stylistic match in terms of replacement. Again, a right winger who is left-footed, but he is much, much more of a goal threat. Obviously, he is still creative as well, and Salah is, of course, creative. But Jarrod Bowen is much more of a goal scorer than Mohammed Kudus is. So I do think it would be definitely a better stylistic match. His age isn't too bad. You'd think he's probably in his prime. He's not this young player like some of the others on this list. However, you would still be able to get a good few years out of him. So for me, it really does depend if West Ham stay in the league or not. But if they do get relegated, then there is a chance that Liverpool could get Jarrod Bowen at a bit of a discount almost. So I do think he would be a good option if West Ham were to get relegated. So we'll put him in great option there. Okay, on to the next player, Iliman Ndiaye from Everton, a younger option than Jarrod Bowen, just 26 years old. Ndiaye is. Obviously, he's not left-footed like these other two guys we've talked about. He is a right-footed player. However, he can play on the left or the right. We've seen him playing on the right this season a lot of the time because Jack Grealish for Everton was playing on the left and Ndiaye was playing on the right. And I don't think it's hampered his performances or his output. For Senegal in the African Cup of Nations, he played on the right as well, quite a lot. So I don't think that matters too much. He is definitely an unbelievable option. However, whether we can see him making the move from Everton to Liverpool, not a particularly common move, obviously, due to the rivalry, due to the proximity of the two clubs. That just seems unlikely to me. I can't see that happening, especially given that Everton are potentially going for Europe at the moment as well. If they do get a European spot, then he's even more likely to stay. I think he would be a good option, but I'm going to say he's probably not a realistic option, so we'll put him in there. Okay, the next player we're looking at is Yankuba Minteh from Brighton. One of the youngest players we're looking at here, just 21 years old. He's in his second year at Brighton, and by no means is he kind of a numbers or a stats monster. About 10 goals and assists over each season, so nothing really that special. However, he hasn't necessarily started every single game. We know that Herzl quite likes to rotate his players, especially his wingers. And we've typically seen him on the right quite a lot. He played on the left in a recent game and was really, really good there. So he is definitely someone who can play on either wing. And I do think that he can be a massive, massive goal threat. We've seen it in certain games where he looks so dangerous. But we've also seen him on the left where he's not going to cut in as much given he's left-footed. However, he can beat a man and get a cross in. So I do really like him as an option. I do think this is quite a realistic one. I do think that Liverpool would be able to get him out of Brighton for not a huge, huge fee. And given his age, I do think he would be a very, very good replacement for Mo Salah. You get a lot of years out of him. Whether he would actually reach the heights of Mo Salah, obviously that's quite unlikely, but that's quite unlikely with any player realistically. I still think he'd be a good option. So I'm going to put him in the great option section. And the next player we're looking at is Anthony Gordon. Now, another really interesting one. Probably the most complete player, maybe bar Jarrod Bowen, that we've looked at so far. However, again, similar to Ndiaye, has played for Everton. That could obviously be a problem when it comes to actually making the deal happen. And I do think that Liverpool would potentially need to get Champions League football to make this happen. It looks like Newcastle might get Europe anyway, potentially. So Liverpool getting Champions League football would help this massively. And this is a much less risky option than someone like a Minteh, someone like an Ndiaye, who you know has performed a little bit, but Anthony Gordon's been doing this for a good few years now. Not quite the best stylistic match, because again, not a left-footed winger. However, we have seen him on the right. He's typically not as good on the right. At the moment, he's performing much better up front than he is on the left wing. And he's probably better on the left wing than he is the right. So whether it would particularly work, I'm not so sure. However, I do think that you could probably, or Liverpool could probably get him out of Newcastle if they really wanted him. Given that the stylistic match isn't the best, I'm going to put him in okay, I guess, just because I think there's better options out there. Right, and the last player we're looking at from the Premier League, or who's currently in the Premier League, is Harry Wilson from Fulham. It's quite well known now that Harry Wilson is out of contract this summer for Fulham, and what a season this guy has had. His best season of his career by far. We've seen him at Bournemouth, and we've obviously seen him at Liverpool before. Liverpool sold him earlier in his career. So whether that almost hampers his chances of being able to go back there or Liverpool wanting him back, who knows? But he's certainly proven himself in the Premier League this season. His numbers have been an absolute joke. And again, he is that left-footed player on the right wing. He's not got Mo Salah's pace. He's not going to get in behind. That's not going to be his core strengths. But on the ball, he is fantastic. He's got a wand of a left foot. Set pieces wise, he can really add something to Liverpool, albeit they maybe don't need that because Dominic Szoboszlai is so dominant from those situations. However, he does add a left-footed option for corners or free kicks in certain areas. But for me, this would be a really good option just because they could get him on a free. He is now 29 years old, so not exactly the youngest. However, if Liverpool could get him on a free, then this would be fantastic. I'm going to put him in great option just because of how potentially cheap they could get him right now. That is all the Premier League players done, or the current Premier League players done. We're now looking at the other leagues, and we've got Rafael Leão from AC Milan. Now, whether he is available, who knows? He is typically a left winger, of course, as we know. His performances haven't been quite as good this season as we've seen in the past, but I have no doubt that he can get back to that form that he was previously in. The risk here is obviously that he's not played in the Premier League, and Serie A to the Premier League doesn't always mix well. Of course, sometimes it does, but it doesn't always. Now, for me, the amount of money that they'd have to pay AC Milan would make this too big a risk to go for, I think. Again, he is typically a left winger, so not even the perfect stylistic match to replace Mo Salah. If he was, then maybe it would be worth the risk, but him changing position as such and changing leagues, that would just be too much of a risk for me. So I think this one is just a straight no. Next up, we've got Rodrygo from Real Madrid. He is typically always linked to a Premier League club. He's been linked with Arsenal quite a lot, especially last summer and in January. And that makes sense because they've needed a left winger. Martinelli hasn't been good enough. Obviously, Trossard had a bit of good form at the start of the season, but certainly isn't good enough still. So Arsenal have been linked with him quite a lot to play on the left. Typically for Real Madrid, he's been playing on the right because Vinny Jr., as we know, plays on the left. And he is still effective. I think his best season was when he was playing actually up front in a 2, when Bellingham had that unbelievable goal-scoring season and Rodrygo was up there as well. So we know that he can get involved in goals. However, he's never been an output monster at any club, to be honest. Not even when he was at Santos. He's only hit a 10-goal season once in his career, and that does include the Santos years as well. So he'd be a good fit stylistically on the right. Obviously, he's not left-footed like Salah is, but I do think that he performs well, even in an inside forward role on the right. Whether Liverpool could get him for a good price, I'm not so sure. I don't think Real Madrid would be that against him leaving. So I do think it could happen. And for that reason, I'm going to put him in okay, I guess. I don't think he'd be like an unbelievable replacement, but I do think he'd be okay. Okay, up next, we've got Bradley Barcola from PSG. And I included Barcola rather than including Doué and Kvaratskhelia because he has been the one that's been linked most with Liverpool, and he is probably the one that they'd more likely get out of PSG. Barcola's such an interesting one. He's been really good these last 2 seasons. He's only 23 still, so still a very, very young player. Whether you'd be able to get him out of PSG or not, I'm not so sure. They've obviously got quite a lot of attacking players in those positions. They've got Kvaratskhelia, Doué, Dembele, as I mentioned. But numbers-wise, he is always pretty good. Last season, 14 goals, 10 assists. This season, he's already hit 10 goals. Every time I watch him, it's really interesting because he is absolutely rapid. So fast. Meaning that he will just get so many chances, of course. But I've seen him miss a lot of chances as well. I don't think he's this elite finisher. However, interestingly, this is exactly what I said and thought when Mo Salah came to Liverpool. I thought to myself, okay, Mo Salah is rapid. He'll get him behind so much, meaning he'll get so many chances. But I do think he'll miss a lot of chances. I think he'll score a lot of goals because of the sheer amount of chances he'll get. But I do think he'll miss a lot. That's in my exact thinking with Bradley Barcola, meaning that maybe this is the perfect match. He obviously can play on the right and does play on the right, but he's not left-footed. So, again, not the best stylistic match. However, I don't think that matters. I'm not quite sure how much Liverpool would have to spend to get him from PSG. Obviously, he is still a young player, so I think they'd have to spend quite a lot. I'm going to put this one as not realistic. Now, it might actually be realistic. I'm just not sure if Liverpool will be able to or will want to spend as much money as PSG will want. Now, the next player we're looking at is Francisco Conceição from Juventus. Now, he is a super talent. 23 years old. Stylistically, again, fantastic. Right winger, left-footed. Loves to cut in on his left foot. Hasn't played loads for Juventus this season. However, more recently, he's been getting starts. At the beginning of the season, he was more coming off of the bench. But more recently, he has been getting starts and he has been performing really well. This is where most of his output has come from, and he's never been a big output guy either. He's only got 3 goals, 3 assists this season in the league, for example. But I think that given the minutes and given the right role, he could be fantastic. I do think that Liverpool could get him for a reasonable fee, to be honest. So I do think this one's realistic, and I actually think he would be a great option. Of course, given he's playing or coming from a different league, this one is always going to be a risk. However, I don't think you're going to have to pay like 100 million to get him. So the risk isn't quite as big as some other players that you could go for. Okay, we're on to the last 2 now, and this is a big one. A name that has been floating around quite a lot, Michael Olise. We all know what this guy's about by now. We've seen him for the last season and a half at Bayern Munich, and obviously we saw him before that at Crystal Palace. He is a creative genius, an absolute joke. Again, left-footed player on the right. However, he is much more creative than a goal scorer. Obviously, he still scores plenty of goals. He scored 12 goals last season for Bayern Munich. He scored 10 goals for Crystal Palace the season that he left. And he's already scored 10 goals this season. However, assists-wise is where he gets his numbers. And I think this is where, as I mentioned earlier, that doesn't mean that he's the best stylistic match for a Salah replacement. But when you've got forwards like Isak and Ekitike rather than Bobby Firmino, I think that you can have a more creative player there rather than an out-and-out goal scorer. The problem will be whether they can get him from Bayern. He's 24 years old. Bayern only bought him a year and a half ago. I'm going to put him in the not realistic category just because Bayern wouldn't let him go unless it is a huge, huge fee, which I just can't see Liverpool doing, to be honest. And then the last player we've got here, Diomande. What a talent this guy is. 19 years old. He's at RB Leipzig. He scored 10 goals and got 6 assists in 26 games this season. So output-wise, he's a joke. Obviously, this is the Bundesliga. He hasn't played in the Premier League. He hasn't played really anywhere other than RB Leipzig. And I think he was at Leganes last season. But still, 10 goals, 6 assists. And his game is dribbling. His game is carrying the ball. He is such an exciting player to watch. Athletically, he's a beast. And he's still only 19 years old. But usually when you see 19-year-olds who are ball carriers, dribblers, the output isn't there. However, the output is there currently. And again, there is a massive caveat that it is the Bundesliga. So whether this can translate to the Premier League, who knows? But athletically, physically, he's a beast. 19 years old, meaning you can get a good 10, 12, 13 years from him, if not longer. The problem is, RB Leipzig are going to want a lot of money for him. He is an absolute talent, of course, and the rumours are that they want close to 90, 100 million. So it is a huge, huge risk, but he is a really, really exciting player. For that reason, I do think that he is the one to go for if you're Liverpool. I think he is by far the most exciting option. I think he's by far the highest ceiling. Maybe Olise could be that. But I do think that Diomande can be one of the best wingers in the world over the next 10 years. So it could just be worth the risk from a Liverpool standpoint. And that is everyone. For me, Diomande would be the replacement that I'd be looking at if I were Liverpool and if I wanted to spend that much money. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know who you think Liverpool should be going after. But that is all for this one. If you like the video, make sure you hit like, make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.